What's up, y'all? I'm your host, Gloria, and you are listening to another episode of Good Vibes and Deep Dives, where we connect and reflect every week. And of course, shout out to you for tuning in to me. Of course, we got to get started with a quick life update. Y'all know, same old, working, trying to be active. I've been a little lazy these past couple of days, not even gonna hold you. It's been like 3 days that I haven't really done anything. So today the pressure is definitely on. Gotta do something. Lift a weight, run a second. I don't know. But just a little something, something. And yeah, other than that, just trying to stick to my schedule. I'm one of those calendar people. Been having a couple of appointments lately. Nothing too crazy, just regular routine maintenance, which is important. Always better to be preventative than reactive when it comes to healthcare. And actually, this is a great segue since we're talking medical stuff because my grievance of the week has to do with these medical offices. And know this to the medical professionals, we appreciate you, but I just think it's so crazy that if I go to somebody's medical office, general doctor, dentist, whomever, if I show up late or I'm a no show, you're going to charge me, which I understand you're protecting the business. But I feel like there should be some type of system for me to be rewarded for being on time. Because if I'm on time, I just got to pay regular. And I'm subjected to whatever wait and hold times you have. So if you decided you want to double book yourself or you have a patient that's taking extra long, you're going to make me wait 20, 30, 40 minutes. I've waited an hour before. And guess what? No compensation for me. But if I'm late 15 minutes that you were going to have me wait anyway, I got to pay. And even then, sometimes you'll even cancel my appointment and I still got to pay. So I just feel like we need a more collaborative system. This feels a little bit one sided. You're going to get paid regardless. And I just don't think that's fair if you're going to have me wait all this time. I think you should earn waiting minutes. I think for however many times I go to an appointment, there should be some type of system where when I get there and the time it takes for me to be seen should be recorded. And then on the days that I'm late or miss an appointment, you take from that bank. And we even out. If I ever dip, I owe you. And maybe there's a cost per minute, couple cents. I don't know. But I'm just saying, I think it's real unfair that I get charged when I'm late, even if I'm showing up, when there's been plenty of times that I've waited and I've never been compensated for my inconvenience. So there's that. I just think we could do better and have a more beneficial system. But nonetheless, shout out to my medical professionals. All right. So now that takes us into the proverb, and we got to balance out the complaint with something positive. Here's your reminder to take care of your body, and it will take care of you. One more time for the people in the back. Take care of your body, and it will take care of you. Like I said, when it comes to health and wealth, very important to invest in it. You definitely want to stay on top of things, be ahead of things, because chances are, if you're catching some type of illness or a situation, it's probably been there for a little while and festering. So, you want to make sure you're tuned in, tapped in to what your body got going on so that you can give it the care that it needs. And then in the future, it can continue to stay intact and healthy to take you into old age. And now it's time for the deep dive. Feel like I should have like splash sound effects coming soon when we increase our budget. But yeah, let's get into the deep dive. And I was trying to figure out what to talk about. And one of my friends brought up daylight savings time. And I was like, ooh, That's such an interesting topic. So, as you all know, daylight savings time is when we set our clocks forward during part of the year and then we set them back. And essentially, this is to make better use of natural daylight. So, you probably heard spring forward and fall back. So, again, in the spring, we're going forward an hour. In the fall, we're going back an hour. So, ultimately, it evens out. But you just have this, I guess, habit or thing that we've just been programmed to do twice a year. And 40% of countries use it. So it's not a small amount, even though it's not the majority. And one of the things that I found interesting is within those 40% of countries who use it, there's a difference in that spring forward, fall back, depending on what hemisphere you're in. So if you're in the northern hemisphere, think like North America, Central America, Europe, Asia, and Northern Africa, you're going to follow the traditional spring forward, fall back. But if you're in the southern hemisphere, so Australia, New Zealand, the majority of South America, and Africa, Southern Africa, you're going to do the opposite. So you're going to fall back in the spring and then go forward in the fall. So that's interesting to me. It kind of reminds me of like, I don't know how true this is, but I remember as a kid, people telling you like on the other side of the world, the toilet, like when you flush it, spins the opposite way. That's kind of what comes to mind. Maybe a better example is people driving on the opposite side of the road, but I'm not sure what the logistics are with that. And you know what? That's going to be a dive for another week because that's also interesting. How did half of the people decide to drive on one side of the road and the other half decide on the other side? I think the people want to know. So, anywho, back to daylight savings time. So, yeah, so I thought that was pretty interesting that depending on the hemisphere you're in, it's going to affect what you end up doing time wise. Makes perfect sense, but never really thought about that. And then that takes me to the whole reason why we do this in the first place. So, growing up, I thought it was the farmers. I was blaming the farmers. I was like, here we are looking out for agriculture. We all decided we need to do this for the farmers. So we, chose to make this sacrifice. And come to find out, nothing to do with the farmers at all. It goes back to wartime. And the older that I get, everything defaults or boils down to money and war. And you know what? That's a whole other type of show, which I'm really interested in doing because I am starting to really get intrigued by history and want to like immerse myself in that world since it wasn't really something that I was super into. But yeah, daylight savings time comes from war. All this time I'm blaming the farmers and come to find out they hate it too. Those Chick-fil-A cows don't know what daylight savings time is. They want their food in the dark or in the sunshine. As long as it's in the same time, that's all they care about. So, nothing to do with the farmers and all to do with World War One. Daylight savings time was introduced to save fuel and energy for these military operations and different war industries. Essentially, Germany did it first. So in 1916, when World War One was happening, they decided to put this in motion so they can save on like coal and things like that, right? Then the US decided to adopt it in 1918 thanks to Woodrow Wilson. So he officially established the time zones and then implemented DST as a patriotic measure for us to win the war. So then, fast forward to the Treaty of Versailles in June 1919. That's when, everything went on pause. The people agreed to stop shooting. Congress said, now that we're done with the fight, we're going to veto this daylight savings time thing. So you got the treaty in June, they vetoed DST in August. Really quick turnaround. So then the people are living daylight saving times free up until FDR. So Franklin Roosevelt decided to institute wartime year round between 1942 and 1945. So this is when World War II is popping. And we stay on daylight savings time up until the war is done. And the people decide at this point, do what you want. It's up to the individual states and towns to figure out if they want to run it on DST or not. And because of that, it led to chaos. So from about 1945 to 1966, the people were just living out here willy nilly. And so it caused a lot of dysfunction. So one of the famous examples is this 35-mile bus ride from Steubenville, Ohio, all the way to Moundsville, West Virginia. The passengers would have to change their watches 7 times during these 35 miles to make sure that their time was accurate. That just sounds like a lot of work. And like, I'm going to be either real late or real early. So that's crazy. And then just in general, it created a lot of issues. Think about different industries, transportation, broadcasting, all of these industries are very time centric in terms of how they run. And so because it was up to however people felt at those, state and individual levels, essentially they had to create these very complex schedules in order to navigate all of the different local times. And so 1966, the people had enough and they institute the Uniform Time Act. This came from some lobbying. They really pushed for this to get fixed. And so that's what got us to have some type of unification. So they didn't force the states to necessarily adopt daylight savings time, but they basically said it needs to be at the state level. So either everybody in the state is going to do it or nobody in the state is going to do it. And then they also said, you know what, if we're going to do this daylight savings time thing, then it needs to be synchronized. You can't pick and choose when you do it and then decide, okay, you're going to spring forward really in the summer and then you're going to fall back in the winter. We're going to do the unified thing. And so the synchronized national schedule used to be the last Sunday of April to the last Sunday of October. And so with this act, any state could opt out. And Hawaii said, me first, I want no parts. And then most of Arizona also chose to opt out. We need to dig into that because most of Arizona, I thought it was all or nothing. So how did y'all slip in there? Hmm. But yeah, Hawaii and Arizona essentially said we want no parts. So they've essentially run on standard time since 1966. Everybody else got to stick to their DST and we've been dealing with it ever since. Now, the interesting thing is they tried to make this permanent once before. Mr. Nixon, Richard Nixon, tried to make it year round in 1974 because there was a massive OPEC oil embargo. And so he tried to sign this emergency act to enforce the year round conservation of fuel, essentially, right? And so when he passed it, a lot of people supported it. They thought it was amazing, they thought it was great. But then the winter hit. And so when winter came, because the clocks were advanced, they stuck to spring forward. They never really got the sunrises in the morning. They didn't happen until 9 a.m. So in most regions, it was super dark. And essentially, the people said, we can't operate like this. So we went back to regular time and then switching to DST. So since then, they tried to modify this one more time, and that was the Energy Policy Act of 2005. And that was George Bush trying to maximize daylight for the sake of commerce and our lifestyles. So he extended daylight savings time a month. So now we're used to what we're used to, which is the second Sunday in March all the way up through the first Sunday in November. Now that takes us to present day. The U.S. House of Representatives just passed H.R. 139, which is the Sunshine Protection Act. They're trying to take us back to what Nixon did, which is them trying to lock us into daylight savings time, which means we're just going to have that issue with winter again if it fully goes through. And guess what? Hawaii and most of Arizona still want no parts. So, yeah, that's currently in motion. They actually passed this before in the Senate in 22, but it ended up stalling. So we're just here waiting to see what happens. There are some alternative bills. One is the Sunshine for Our Kids Act, which actually aims to do the opposite of the Sunshine Protection Act. So instead of us sticking to DST, they're trying to stick to standard time, which is actually heavily backed by a lot of medical organizations like the American Medical Association and a lot of sleep experts because they say that's how our biological clocks really work. They operate on the standard time, natural morning light. And then you also have the Daylight Act, which is supposed to be more of a compromise. So instead of us fully sticking to daylight savings time or no daylight savings time, they're trying to propose we just move our clocks forward 30 minutes. That way, it's a happy medium. Now, you know what all of this tells me? Time is low key an illusion. Like, we need it because obviously you have things like aging and expiration that you should keep track of. But in real life, we're just willy nilly adding an hour here, taking an hour there, giving you 30 minutes, taking 30 minutes. What are we doing? What's going on with the time? How do you really know if you have the right time? Right? So many questions. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that little history fun fact lesson on daylight savings time. I guess the real question is, what do you like? Are you a spring forward, fall back, or do you not care for this routine at all? Me personally, I'm a fall back kind of girl. I always feel better like once we go back to standard time. That's my season to thrive. So I'm in support for the Sunshine for Our Kids Act. I think if we're going to get rid of daylight savings time or the habit of having to switch our clocks, then we should go to standard time because that's really the original time. But you know, the people going to do what they want to do. And who knows who's lobbying behind the Sunshine Protection Act. So I guess we'll just have to see how this cookie crumbles. Nonetheless, I just will continue to check the time as I usually do. So, yeah, that is our deep dive of the week. And now I have some super random thoughts for you before we close out. Number one, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, best Scooby-Doo of all time. I don't care. I don't want to see anything else. That movie, hands down, one of my favorite movies, a comfort movie for sure. So, yeah, I just had to put that on the record. That's the best Scooby Doo movie. Number two, I was reading this article and I was just like, you know, wealthy people never seem to amaze me. Like, you just have all this money and don't know what to do with it. So here you are just willy nilly investing in stuff. And in this article, they were basically talking about billionaires who buy dinosaurs, like literally whole skeletons, fossils, all of that, basically as a trophy. And, you know, obviously, most people want like a T-Rex, and those are really hard to come by. Apparently, there's fewer than 30 T-Rexes that are more than 30% intact. So the people who are really into the bones, they know who this T Rex is once it gets sent to auction because there's so little of them out there in the world. So I say that to say that in this article, I don't really remember too much. I just remember the main point of the story was to highlight this scandal of somebody who bought a T Rex skeleton and there was some funny business going on. And essentially, the people who are really into you know, the fossils and know about all of this stuff. They're not just hobbyist collectors. I think they spotted some inconsistencies and essentially somebody bought like a T-Rex for millions of dollars just to find out it was fake because these like people online ended up telling the person that it was fake. So that turned into like a whole whoop-de-doo. So yeah, I might be telling wrong parts of this article, but from what I recall, I remember that was kind of the core of the story. But I just have like this takeaway of, wow, you ain't got nothing better to do, so you just gonna have a T-Rex in your house. I guess maybe I'm a hater. I do kind of think it's cool. I'm a Jurassic Park girly. When I was young, I used to think I wanted to be an archaeologist. So I get the appeal, but I don't know. What do you do with a giant T Rex in your house? I guess look at it, marvel at it, then have your cleaning crew try to be delicate. It just seems like, I don't know. I guess for me, it's more so like you're robbing the world of such an amazing experience. If I had that kind of money, I would probably donate these skeletons to museums and stuff. That's actually one of my favorite exhibits when I do go to like natural science museums. I always want to go to the dinosaur exhibit. But yeah, I don't know. These rich people got too much going on. Anywho, now for the last random topic, I just can't believe this is happening. Apparently, gladiator sandals are making a comeback, and I appreciate a nice gladiator sandal. But what's alarming about this is the fact that the world is just reminding me that I am aging. And I'm not mad at it. It's either you're old or you're dead. So I'd rather be old. But yeah, I'm just starting to be reminded of how long I've been on this planet more often than I usually am. So I already knew I was old when I started wearing eye cream. And then they started sampling music from my childhood. And I was just like, all right, now, not too much. But now the fashions, we're bringing back gladiators, we're bringing back Y2K looks, like, what's next? Are we bringing back wife beaters on top of polos? Plastic bangles with cargos? Like, what is happening? Yeah, flyers. Granted, I never had a pair, but I'm just saying. The Vans about to come back. Got my Vans on, but they look like sneakers. Are we gonna start cooking again? Shout out to Little B. Are we gonna start cat daddying? I don't know. I just feel like my teenage years are back and I don't like it. So yeah, that is it for Super Ransom. And we are done with today's show. So I hope you enjoyed tuning in. And if you did, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. And of course, share the vibes with a friend. For more, you can always find us at goodvibesdeepdives.com. And until next time, bye.